I'm 2 months into developing my game, and it felt like slop. Honestly, it hurt to admit, but the game was just garbage. My animations were boring, my hits didn't land, and combat was so lame. I could either ship it broken or tear it all down and start over. Well, I chose to rebuild. Now, let's backtrack to my last devlog where I mentioned a new type of combat. Well, surprise surprise, that was going to be a sword. So I got straight to work and whipped it up in Krita. Then I made the animations for it. And honestly, they didn't look terrible. It was actually kind of cool. But it didn't help my combat feel at all, and that realization was the exact tipping point for me. My frustration with my game was growing every time I worked on it, since combat felt worse and worse with every new addition. I'm sure it's hard for you guys to tell because I usually only show the highlights, but check out this raw clip from actual gameplay. I was spamming my attack button as fast as I could, and this was the result. Even only as a viewer, I'm sure you can still tell how dry that was. My animations were terrible because I didn't know what I was doing, and my character design was really rigid, so it was already hard to move to begin with. Look at how messy my animation window was. Adding new animations into this was a nightmare. But here's what made all of this so depressing. Combat is not just part of my game, it is my game. Without good combat, then there is no game, and what's worse is that I had spent 2 months working on this, and I knew I wouldn't be able to ship it at this rate. Now, before I rebuilt anything, I had to figure out why everything broke in the first place. I couldn't just take another stab at this and hope I wouldn't make the same mistakes. So I ended up reading a lot of documentation and watching a whole lot of videos from Brackies and other helpful channels. And what I learned was kind of embarrassing. Turns out Unity already had a bunch of built-in tools. For example, a rigging and a mesh tool for 2D sprites. Meaning I could have just animated separate body parts of a player I drew instead of making him directly in Unity with different shapes. Then I learned that there's a finite state machine built into animations. In my previous devlogs, I showed how I built my own finite state machine for my mob's AI from scratch, but I could have just used this. Blend trees let animations transition smoothly, so no more snapping. And layers let multiple animations run at the same time. So basically, I've been reinventing wheels for 2 months straight. But now, I had to actually learn how to use all of this. And it was rough at the start. Step 1. Character design. Like I mentioned, I made my player entirely in Unity using different shapes. So yeah, I literally made my own joints. But now, since I could rig characters directly in Unity, I just had to draw my player. A simple stick figure took me way longer than what I'd like to admit. Rigging was easy, since it's just adding bones where you want specific movement. But adding the mesh was an absolute mare. My body parts felt distorted, and I spent a long time tweaking it. Then came the inverse kinematics, which wasn't so bad. Animating, however, was really hard to get used to. There were days I just felt stuck since no matter what I tried, they still looked awkward. But I kept going, and after watching a ton of these stick figure fight videos, something clicked and I finally saw improvement. My animations started to feel alive. And now came the part I'd been waiting for, making the combat actually hit. I spent an entire week on a single punch with a whole checklist of effects to nail. First, I added a hit reaction and a death animation. It's subtle, but I also added a slight color change and hit stun to sell the impact. Next was the hit trail effect. My first version was okay, but later on I spent a lot of time on making it better. For on-hit particles, I made a simple blood splat. My old version looked like those particle sandbox simulators from back in the day, so it's safe to say I like my new version a lot better. Damage numbers were really satisfying, so I had to include them. And I even added crits, which will amplify all the effects. I brought back the health bars since I actually like those. It's kind of hard to tell in this clip, but I also added screen shake, since it was an easy but high payoff effect. I made this ripple effect too, and later on I'm thinking about adding shaders to get a cool distortion effect on it. Last but not least came sound. Despite watching a lot of sound design videos, I still ended up with something pretty mid, but we'll get there. Here's the before. And here's the after. Now that I finished the first attack, I was able to make the rest of my attacks in a single day. So I'd say spending an entire week on impacts was well worth it. Next, I added blocking and dodging to create more depth for combat. I wanted to fulfill my word on the new type of attack for this devlog, so I spent some time on getting the sword back and making some attacks with it. This is also where I really invested time into the hit trail. It started out as a trail for just my sword, but I learned that I could straight up add it to my bones, so this replaced the earlier hit trail I had made. Here's where we started. And here's the final result. Yeah, I'm really happy with this outcome. I started refactoring anxiously since it would mean that I wasted 2 months. But honestly, I learned so much because I built everything from scratch. I think it's going to help me become a much better game developer in the long run. Or maybe I'm just coping. This devlog was messier and more honest than I originally planned, but I think that's the point. Making games is messy, and if I made it look easy, then I'd just be lying to you. I have some really cool content planned for this game, and I've been working really hard on making a storyline for it too. I'm thinking about making the first phase of the game as a demo and releasing it so I can get some feedback on it, but I'm not sure yet, so let me know in the comments if that's something you'd want to see. But anyway, drop a like and subscribe if you want, it would mean a lot. Thanks and see you all next time.